Hello, hello! This is Brian from Tavaran Games, yet again with another update on Littlevale. So I managed to get quite a bit done on the game over the last couple weeks, and I'm going to talk to you guys about that today with updates to the UI, some NPC updates, and items in the game. But the first thing I'm going to talk about is this loading screen I finally added to the game. Now, right now, the screen itself is pretty simple. It's just the word loading on top of a blank background that is blue when the game actually loads in. Nothing fancy about it. And the script for that is also pretty simple. If we look at the load scene script, all we're doing is we're loading in this function, and instead of loading a scene directly from the scene manager, we're loading that scene as an asynchronous operation, and then we're checking to wait for that to be done before we return the scene itself. I just found this code online really quickly, but it works pretty well. So basically, this load screen will be shown. We load into it first, and then pass it an integer to tell it, okay, which scene do we actually want to load in the game? And then this will wait until that scene has all of its items and information loaded before displaying it to you. So we can see that in the game. I've implemented it whenever you save and load, or whenever you load the game or start a new game. So we'll just go to the start of the game. Let this load. So when we start a new game, let's just randomize our character a little bit, whatever it ends up being, and then we will start the game, and there's our loading screen. Another fun thing, when you do load into the game, for some reason the bed freaks out a little bit. I got to figure out what that glitch is and fix it, but that is future Brian's problem. But yeah, we have a very simple load screen. Once I've had a bit more work on the game, I will probably animate that, make it look nicer and more useful. But for now, it is useful to show the player that the game is in fact loading and hasn't frozen on you. Alright, so the next big update to the game is more on the code base side. So if we go over to our player controller and we look at the item, so these are the lists for all the items that are held in your inventory. I have added in qualities to it. So before we just had the item itself, which is a list of this custom item class I've talked about in previous videos, that stores all the information for that particular item type. So its value, its name, its description, the icon used to display it in the UI, as well as the quantity of that item, and yes, now the quality, which is just a simple integer. So with the quality, right now I've only implemented it quite simply of each item in the game has a quality from 1 to 4, with 1 being the default basic item quality, up to 4 being high quality items, or as I call them, epic quality items. And when you're selling items, or buying them, the price and their value is multiplied by their quality. So higher quality items end up being worth more. Now, I want to implement this in the game into different systems of the game, such as your farming. As you get better at farming, and I implement the skills for that, the chances of you having higher quality crops grown increases. And maybe adding in things like fertilizer to help you also increase the value of crops. And those higher value crops will be sold for more. Same thing goes with raising livestock. As they are better taken care of and like you more, the items they produce, like the milk and the wool and the eggs, will be higher quality. And fishing, as you're improving fishing, you'll catch higher quality fish. And with cooking, as you get better at cooking, you'll produce higher quality meals, where I'll also tie in the amount of energy you get from the meal, the amount of hunger that's relieved, into the quality as well. For now, though, it is just an integer that is being passed around the game and not really being worked with, but it will give me the potential in the future to implement more systems, as well as possibly item degradation. Like as you use your tools, they'll get worse and worse, and you'll eventually have to repair them, that type of thing. Now, the first place to actually integrate that into the game is this transfer item function. This function does all of the item transferring from storage and into your inventory and back. All of it is done through this one function. So that way, it's not being done multiple times, it's not being fired from multiple scripts, and we're not going to end up with duplicating or items or screwing things up. Hopefully. Yeah, you may be able to find a glitch I haven't yet. So I added in the quality integer as a variable into the transfer item script. And now when it's trying to match up the item in your inventory to what's being transferred, it's also going to try to match up the quality. So let's say you have multiple potatoes, one's quality 1 and one's quality 3. It'll check not only that what's being transferred into its payload, but also does the quality match. So that way, those quality 1 items, quality 3 items will end up as separate items in your inventory, so that you can use them separately in recipes or in selling them or whatever you want to do with them. And then we're just either, if the item is found, if the item's not found, it's added into your inventory with the quality as well. And if it's found, it's changing the quantity of that item. Or in the case where it's out of those items, if you've removed the last one from your inventory, it's removed from your inventory list. Now, fortunately for me, because I'm using this one transfer item function, anywhere it's triggered, as soon as I added in this variable, anywhere it's triggered, developed an error in the compiler, which allowed me to find all the places I needed to add the quality information in. So that's included in the storage script, where now each of the main storage lists also has a quality component. So so this is your player inventory. This would be the shipping box where you sell all your items. This is your primary storage, which is a storage shed that you can store your items in. All now have this quality thing. And anytime where we're transferring items back and forth to your inventory, we are able to save and move this quality value. As well, the fridges, though, have their own, each of them has their own separate list. So that one is saved in the actual fridge script, and so it has a quality. As well as now in the cooking, it gets the quality from your inventory or the backpack, and saves the quality of the item in your cooking, in the trash bins, etc. There's a lot of places that this quality comes into play. So I had to go through and change all that in the code. And then I had to, of course, save the quality. So in the save load file, we now save in the backpack qualities, your shipping and your storage, as well as so your fridges, which have their own separate storage. That quality is now saved in the additional data, which saves the items in the fridge. And this will also let me put in other types of personal storage that you can move around your house outside of that big main storage shed. So we are able to save the data. Now, when it comes to loading it, previous save games made before this quality update won't have this quality information. So I counted for that in the loading script. So if we look at the fridge loading, so before, the object data is actually saved as string, which we split into the separate items. And so we are then loading the actual name of the ID of the object and the quantity. And then it's checking, is the quality actually there? Is it in the save script? And if so, load the quality that's saved. Otherwise, just give that item a default quality of 1. And we're doing the same thing when we're loading the shipping box, the storage shed, and your inventory up here. We're checking, okay, have we actually saved an item quality? Is it there? If so, load it. If not, make it a default of 1. So this way, any of the few people who've actually been testing the game and playing it, as well as my past save games, will be able to load correctly without throwing errors, because they were throwing a lot of errors before I had this in. Eventually, this bit of code will be removed, and we'll just be loading the quality in, because no one will have any of these old save games. But for now, it's a good way for me to make this backwards compatible. Now, of course, since we have the quality, we have to make that visible in the game. So the main place we see that is in the storage script. When you're in a store or looking at your storage, this bit of UI is what's shown. So for each of the actual item icons, which are here for your backpack and your storage script, I've added in a sub icon called the quality, which is a child of that particular storage box icon. Now it has its own little script called the quality icon script, and it just takes a public integer value, and then it figures out which of the quality icons to display. So the quality icons are up here in the elements folder, and I've just made 3. So this bronze, silver, and gold plus sign, or it'll make it invisible if it's a default quality. So the script for the quality icon is pretty simple. What it's doing is just checking, has the quality value of that icon been changed? If so, if it's less than 2, so if it's 1 or 0, make that icon invisible, so it doesn't show up. And then otherwise, make it visible. So we're changing the alpha value to 0 for invisible, or to 255 to make it visible. And then just change its sprite to the correct sprite for the quality that's been passed in. And so it'll either show up as bronze, silver, or gold. So if we play the game, for your initial starting items that are stored in your storage shed, I have made those, given those qualities. Even though these items would not have a quality in the game, they'd all be a default of 1. Just for testing, I gave each one a different one. So the first one 1, then 2, then 3, then 4. So you can see we have the different quality icons showing up and displaying correctly. So we can move these over to our backpack and they move over and display. And they'll always display in the correct order. So the way we're actually interacting with that is through our storage redraw function, which is part of the storage script. So I gotta scroll down a little bit into this redraw storage function. So this, anytime you move around the storage, you transfer an item back and forth, you move up and down, this fires. And what it first does is for the storage side and for the backpack side, it makes all of these icons this blank icon back image. So just this brown square. So it sets them all to that. And then it actually blanks, it sets the quality for all these corners to 0 as well, so they make themselves disappear. And then it checks, okay, is there actually an item there? So in this case, we're looking at the backpack. If there is an item there, if the list is greater than 1, the 0 is a blank icon. The 0 point of the list is a blank icon to ensure that there is always at least one item in the list, but that isn't displayed. So it looks to see, okay, is this list greater than 1, in which case we have an actual item in the inventory. Let's change the icon to the appropriate sprite of that item. In the case of the primary backpack, so these central items are the only ones we display the quantity for. Display that, and then change the quality icon's quality. And then it checks, is the list, like, are there more icons to display? Do you have more items to show? In which case it displays those, changing the icons, as well as changing the quality. And then that allows this to display all of the items in your backpack and storage nicely, as well as the shop. So if you go to a shop, it'll display all the items that are for sale here, and then we'll display your shopping cart here. So it won't display your inventory, it displays whatever you'd move from this list to this. So it becomes a temporary list. But so with the quality icons working here, the other place we display it is here in the backpack, and so that's the same type of thing. It's just a quality icon. And then when you're playing in the game, I added in a function that will fire anytime you change the item you're holding, called show item. And then that just changes that icon to what it's supposed to be, changes the weight text to how many you're holding here and the quantity text. And then also it displays the quality. So that's just a quick little function I wrote that is fired by the controls up here. Anytime you're changing your item or you place an item, and say it's now no longer inventory and the item that you're currently holding therefore changes, it will fire that show item script function. So that is all working now. Now the other major update to talk about is the UI. So with the UI, you saw we had the storage and all that. I actually didn't have a way to look at your inventory outside of this backpack and when you actually open the shop or the storage shed or the shipping bin. So I made a storage UI, which is just a picture here. And then it's operating pretty similar to the previous storage script. So we have these icons here that will display which item it is, and then this information screen to show the information about the item. So its name and its description, and then just the controls here. You can see I've also done a few other UIs we will talk about in a second. But the first one is your inventory, so your backpack here. So it has its own script I wrote, which is very similar to the storage script. In it, you have the actual, like the icon display places, and then it's grabbing the player script and just using the backpack from the player's script. So when you're moving up and down, it changes which item you're currently looking at. Also, I added in this function here. If you're holding the shift key while you look up and down, it will actually move that item, which is just this simple function here that saves the item into these item variables, so the item, the quantity, the quality, removes the item from where it was in the player's script, in their controller, and then reinserts it wherever you've told it to move to, so the direction of 1 or -1, so up or down. And then with the drawing of the inventory, anytime we move, we move an item, we redraw the inventory, and that's pretty much the same script as the storage script. It just only has to draw items from the backpack. So with that inventory page, if we go back into the game, I should have just paused it, but we can go back into the game in a second. You can actually sort your inventory now, which is not something that you had to do at like the storage shed before, so it was a bit of a pain in the ass. So let's move those items over. If we press tab or we press I, it will open up, and we can see all the items. So if I hold shift, the item will move around the list, so we can just sort our inventory that way. So that gives you a little bit more control over your inventory. So the opening and closing of the inventory is pretty simple code. So we just have this one that's looking if you press the tab key or you press the I key. It checks firstly to make sure you're in a state where you can open your inventory. So you have to be stationary, you have to not be sleeping, using the bathroom, showering, washing your hands, or eating. And if all of those are true, it can open the inventory. The other new UIs are the same thing, just with the map and the relationships page, which we'll talk about in a second. Just they open up a different function. And so we trigger up these open functions, which then tells the inventory script which item you currently have selected in the game outside. So right now we say have the potato selected. When you open it, you'll see the potatoes first. If we change and we say the fishing rod, when we open it, we'll be on top of the fishing rod. And then it redraws the inventory and then moves that UI element onto the screen. And then it does this invoke. Now what this is doing is it's waiting one frame to tell the inventory script that it's been opened and to move the game controls over to it. I was having an issue that the game controls and the inventory controls were overlapping for a frame, and that was causing some glitches. So this just makes sure that it waits until the inventory is actually open and displayed, and then transfers control to it, and that prevents control overlap of multiple pages at once, which fixed some bugs I introduced when I created these. So that's working pretty well. The other page I added is this maps page. So if we press E from here, we can display the map. So the first thing I did is I made a very terrible map image of the town. I just did this really quickly. I didn't want to spend too much time on it because as I update the game, I add more buildings and locations. I'm just going to have to redraw this. So I didn't want to spend too much time drawing it right now. And you can see that there's also the icon of you on the map, which shows where you are. And actually, if we close the map, you can see that is where we are. We move, we open the map, and it corrects the position of that icon. So the map script is pretty simple. If I open it, it's up here. So this is what we're doing. Anytime we open the map, we just fire this position function. And all it does is it grabs your character's in-game position and then uses these equations to convert that to a pixel value on the map. I just used Excel to calculate the actual equations and then type them in here. So I'll update this as I update the map page. And then it just moves that red dot, which is just a game object, into that position that it's calculated. So as we move around the game, we anytime we open the map, it should be at the correct position. Yep. So this little dot will move with you. So that way, if you ever get lost, you're up here in this area, it'll show you, and then you can find your way back to your farm down here. Now, once I've really built out the game and I've got to a place where pretty much all of the buildings in the town is built up, I will then make an actual nice proper map image that will look a lot better than this. Now, the final page I added in is this relationships page. On it, what I wanted it to do was display everyone you met and then your current relationship with them out of these 10 hearts. Now, with Maurice, we just met him, so he just knows us. He kind of likes us. But every NPC in the game shows up on this, whether you know them or not. So this way, you know how many people you haven't met left. How many people you haven't met left in the game. And also, I had to add in this little slider bar just so you knew that the list kept going. Because once we have all these just questions, it's like, wait, where are we on the list? You might not realize you can move up and down. So we've just met Maurice. In this case, let's actually go and say talk to Derek, who I know will be at work here. We can say hi to him. Give it a second. So just say hi. Let's say a few things to him. Let's just quickly go through a few dialogue options and then close that. So we've talked to Derek and we've said a few things. So if we reopen that relationship page, we can see we've met Derek. So he shows up and he actually likes us a bit more than Maurice because we talked to him for a little bit longer. As you talk to the NPCs, your relationship with them will go up. The more you talk to them, the higher it goes. And I plan on in the future adding in extra dialogue options and eventually like dating and marriage and all that using this relationship value. So how that works, let's actually just pause this because it will take a little bit to describe, is the first thing I did is just create a quick class in the game called relation. And then we have this relation script. So what this script is doing, first it has your controller script, but then it also grabs, when you load the game, it finds all of the NPCs in the game and saves them to this array of game objects. Now, since the number of NPCs in the game won't change when the game is loaded, this list doesn't need to be updated. Now, when you open up the relations or move around the relations, so you move up and down using the S and W key, what it does is it uses this draw function. Now, this works a fair bit differently than what you've seen for the storage in the backpack and any of the inventory. So what it first does is it creates a new list of this relation class, and then it goes through all the NPCs. And the first thing it does is it goes to the NPC dialog script and grabs that script, and then it goes and grabs the NPC basically control script, this NPCS. So it grabs and then it saves into this list the name of that NPC, whether or not you've met them, which is actually stored as spoken, the very first spoken variable list in the .npc dialog. Let's see if I have that open. So in that, like whether you've spoken to them for each dialog option that's saved, that's not going to be in this script, it saves whether or not you have spoken to them as true or false. So the first one, 0, that's the introductory dialogue the very first time you speak to them. And so if that is set to true, it means you've met them. If it's set to false, it means you haven't yet met them. Because the very first time you talk to NPC, that's the dialogue that's loaded. And then it grabs your current relationship with the NPC from the NPC script, and it saves these three things. It then sorts these by your relationship with that person. Now, by default, all the people you haven't met will have a 0 relationship with you, and everyone else will be something above that. So just by sorting by the relation, we can guarantee that all the people you know will show up at the top of the list, and all the people you don't know will end up under that. And then for each of those, now that it's been sorted, it will show the icon of that person so that you know who it is, and then it will make the icon invisible, which means the back icon with that question mark will show up. And then it will resize that relationship bar. So if we we're at the scene here while the game is paused. On this relationship UI, we have the front image, which is this main picture. Behind that is this black rectangle to make sure that the back behind those hearts is black. And then in front of each one is a bar, which we can sort of reset the size of. Now, the game currently has it set to what it's supposed to be. Actually, if we drag that out there and then we unpause the game, you can see that that bar is resized. And that's just a red bar. All it is a blank sprite that's red. And so by changing that width, we can change the amount of hearts that are displayed there. So this way, you now know, you can quickly look and see who do you know and how much do they like you. So that's all built in. And then the other thing it's doing is it's just moving this icon bar. So if we go back here, this is just a little image I made, and I just called it bar. They're all called bars, apparently. I'm not very creative on naming things. And then the background image, which we can look at in Paint.net, has that rectangle already drawn in the image. And then so all the script is doing is it's just repositioning that to the correct position it needs to be based on the total number of relationships you have. Or the total number of NPCs there are above the 5 it displays, and so it can correctly move this bar. So as I add NPCs, I don't even need to touch that script again. This bar will move the correct amount so that when you're at the very bottom, it will be down here. When you're at the very top, it'll be up here. So that's quick and easy, and as I add NPCs to the game, I don't have to change that script at all. So those are the UI changes I made. I have planning for 3 more panels so far. So a livestock panel that will show all the animals you own and sort of their health value or like how much they like you, which will give you an indicator of the quality of product they'll eventually make. This skills panel, I have not implemented skills in the game yet, but I do want to implement in like your farming skill, your cooking skill, your fishing skill, et cetera, any ones I can think of. And then as you do those things, those skills will go up and they'll help you produce higher quality items. And so I'll need to make a UI interface that will show all your different skills and their value. It'll look similar to this, except it will be skills and then your current experience in that skill. And then this last one, which I haven't implemented, is I want to implement a page to show your currently known recipes. So anything you've cooked and all the recipes you know will then display on a page. So that I'm going to implement in the future. But I've got these 3 UI pages done. You can shuffle between them. So all that's doing is it's just telling the script, close this one and open the next one and transfer control to that one. And they're all functioning up nicely. So with that done, the next thing I did, well, actually I technically did this before I made that map picture, is I made a whole bunch more roofs for the game. Now currently I make the roofs a bit transparent in the game editor because so that I can see the building underneath and make changes to it without having to change the roof. But yeah, all of these buildings over here, none of them had roofs before. So I made the sprite art for those. So actually, let's go back into the game. I probably shouldn't have stopped it there. And we can walk around and take a look at those, because I had some fun with the sprite art, and there's a bunch of different things I did with that. So actually, we can hold the control key to run. Annoyingly, because it's control you hold to run, as soon as you hit control S, which is running down, the game thinks, or Unity thinks I'm trying to save the game and displays that. But that's, not going to be a problem with the final game. But yeah, you can see over here, this is the vets. We have a roof, and I'll talk about that more in a second. We also have a roof for Alex's store, and this house here, which is Wanda and Wilbur's. Oh, they're not here right now. So those are all pretty simple roofs. Now with the theater, though, I had some fun with the art for this. You can see we added, I put in this nice little theater sign for it. Now, the theater is technically still coming soon because I haven't actually gotten the axe for the theater. And if we run up, we got, hit a stop sign. The library, which I added in this nice window into the roof, and it's got the sort of side colonnades. So I just tried to make those look pretty nice. So that I've added to the game. Now, as you just saw when we went to the veterinarians, there is a new NPC in the game, Jenny, our local veterinarian. So the vet shop right now is where you can buy pets for your farm and the supplies for them. I will also eventually possibly make animals get sick and have medicines and that, but right now you can buy pets from her. So this is Jenny. So she's our new NPC. I just have some basic dialogue written for her and a basic schedule. So she likes to go to the theater, to the park, to the library, and she'll go to the pub sometimes. And also she lives across the street at a house of maids, so we can stop the conversation. So, and of course she spends the day at her work at the vet clinic. And I've given her a house over here, which I haven't given a roof yet, but we have this house here. All right. So the other update, you can sort of see a hint here, is the door script in the town of determining whether or not you can go into those doors. Now, before this update, I was hard coding in for each door in the town a function that checked certain conditions in that. But that was a bit of a pain in the butt. Also, oh, that bed's a little messed up. That was a bit of a pain in the butt. Every time I put a door in the town, I would have to edit that script. So what I did is, if we click through and we find that, say this door, is I now have this variable door Boolean that tells it, okay, if variable door is set, the game is going to check in this, from this top left, which is a list, to the bottom right corner, so it's drawing a square, or a box collider square. Do you see this NPC? So in this case, this is Jenny's house. So do you see Jenny? And then it will check, is Jenny awake or asleep? So actually, let me just open the script. And if she's awake and she's in there, you can go through the door into her house. Otherwise, you're not allowed in. So that's this little bit of code here. So it's going through that, the corners. So it's drawing a box from the top left to the bottom right for every box you do. So it's not just one square. It's like if we're looking at like this house here, it'll draw a box in the corner here and over here. So it is similar to the roof script I wrote before, except in this case, it's looking, is that NPC home? And are they awake? And if not, it tells you that person's asleep, you're not allowed in. If there's no one home, it tells you no one's home. So we can set that. However, if this variable isn't set, it instead goes to a secondary function here, in which case you can set the hour that that door is open, the hour that it's closed, days of the week that it's closed, and if you're inside, you tell it which direction you can exit through. That the door will always be open in that direction. So if like you're inside this house and then say Jenny leaves and then you try to go out after her, without this variable, the game wouldn't let you through the door and you'd just be locked in her house. And that's pretty unrealistic. So this direction exit just says, okay, you can go through. So in this case, if you're facing left, you can walk through the door. So inside to outside. But if you're facing any other direction, so in this case, if you're coming in from the right, it will fire the script and determine whether you can open the door or not. So by adding in this here, I no longer need to hard code in every single separate door. It makes it a lot easier for me to add these doors into the town. So yeah, and then other than that, I've mostly done some bug fixing on the game. Of course, there's always going to be bugs, as I'm hand coding this game. But yeah, that's the major update for the last few weeks. So we have that new loading screen, we have these UI changes, the new door script, a bunch of new roofs in town. And you can see all these roofs are able to, these yellow lines are the roofs just checking if you are under it or not. I'm just displaying that in this scene builder. And then we have our new character, Jenny. So if you made it this far, thank you very much for watching. I hope you like the look of the game and are interested in playing it at some point in the future. If you would like to support me or the development of this game, please check out my Patreon, where you'll also have access to the game itself in this current state. So later, after I upload this video, I will be uploading this latest version of the game for people to playtest, and hopefully they find some enjoyment in the game. Once again, thank you for watching, and have a good day.